This is insane HOA madness. Let me set the scene fast. My name is Marcus, and I deliver mail in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which means I hear every piece of neighborhood gossip before it even makes it to the group chat. I moved here 2 years ago to help support my mom and sister back in Spokane after my dad passed, and the job pays just enough if I am careful. The Enclave at Stonegate Community Association is one of those places where every violation notice gets forwarded to the entire email list like a public execution, and I knew that going in. What I did not know was that replacing my saggy back fence would turn into a 9-month nightmare that nearly bankrupted me and taught me exactly how far someone will go when they have a clipboard and a grudge. It started on a Tuesday in March when I got home from my route and found Brenda Lee standing in my backyard with a tape measure and a retractable badge reel jangling on her hip. She did not knock. She did not call. She was just there, crouched by the fence line with a notepad, wearing a pink windbreaker and a red baseball cap, scribbling notes like she was documenting a crime scene. I walked over and asked if I could help her. She stood up, smiled with zero warmth, and said, "You are out of compliance. Your fence posts are 6 inches over the setback line, and the pickets are 2 inches taller than allowed. I am issuing a stop work order effective immediately." I had not even started yet. The old fence was still standing. I told her I had not touched anything, and she tapped her badge reel against the notepad and said, "Then you better not. I have all day, and so does my fine meter." That was the first time I heard her say it. It would not be the last. I called the management company that night. The rep told me Brenda was the architectural committee chair and that any exterior work needed pre-approval, which I had submitted 3 weeks earlier. She said she would look into it and call me back. She never did. 2 days later, I got an email with the subject line violation notice and a PDF listing 4 separate infractions: fence height, setback encroachment, unapproved color, and failure to submit a contractor license. The fine started at $200 and doubled every 7 days. I had 14 days to remove the fence or face a lien. I had not built anything. The fence was the same one that had been there when I bought the house. I printed the email, grabbed my tab binder with all my fence research, and drove to the HOA office. Brenda was there, sitting behind a desk with a handheld label maker, clicking out little tags and sticking them to a stack of folders. She did not look up when I walked in. I put the email on her desk and said, "This is the old fence. I have not touched it." She glanced at the paper, then at me, and said, "If it is out of compliance now, it was always out of compliance. That is not my problem." I said I had submitted plans for a replacement that would meet every rule, and she shrugged and said, "Go ahead and call whoever you want. I have a committee for that." That line stuck with me. It sounded rehearsed, like she had been waiting to use it. I hired a surveyor the next day. It cost me $350 I could not afford, but I needed proof. The crew came out on a Saturday, ran the lines, and planted orange stakes every 10 feet. When they handed me the report, the lead guy pointed at the boundary and said, "You have got about 8 inches of clearance on the west side and a full 18 inches on the east. Your old fence is inside your property line by a good margin. Whoever told you it is over the line is either guessing or lying." I took the survey packet, added it to my binder, and sent a copy to the management company with a formal dispute. I got an automated reply and nothing else. Brenda showed up again the following Thursday, this time with a guy in a reflective vest who said he was with a towing company. She pointed at my truck, parked in my own driveway, and said, "This vehicle is blocking access to the common area sidewalk and needs to be relocated or removed." The tow driver looked at her, then at my truck, which was a good 4 feet from the sidewalk, and said, "I am not seeing a violation here." She snapped, "I am authorizing the tow." He hesitated, looked at me, and said, "I need something in writing from the property owner or a police officer. I am not doing this on a verbal." Brenda pulled out her phone, said she was calling the police to report an obstruction, and walked to the curb. The tow driver shook his head and told me, "I do not know what is going on here, but I am not hooking your truck without proper authorization." He left. She stayed on the phone for another 10 minutes, pacing and gesturing at my driveway like it was a crime scene. A deputy showed up 20 minutes later. I explained the situation, showed him my survey, and told him Brenda had been escalating for weeks. He walked the property line with me, looked at the stakes, and said, "Your fence is on your side. If she keeps harassing you, file a report." He went over to Brenda, talked to her for a minute, and then left. She glared at me from the curb and said, "This is not over." That weekend, I started the fence work. I hired a crew, got the permit from the city, and made sure every measurement matched the approved plans. The old fence came down on Saturday. By Sunday afternoon, we had the posts set and the first panels going up. I was in the backyard with the crew when Brenda walked up with a clipboard and said, "Stop. You are in violation of the 18-inch setback rule, and I am documenting this for the board." I handed her the survey. She did not even look at it. She said, "Surveys can be wrong." I said, "This one is certified by a licensed surveyor and filed with the county." She said, "I do not care. I am issuing a stop work order, and if you continue, the fines will be $500 per day." The crew boss looked at me and said, "We cannot work under a stop work order, man. If she reports us, we lose our license." I told him I understood, paid him for the day, and watched them pack up and leave. I called the city permit office Monday morning. They confirmed my permit was valid and that the HOA could not override it. I asked if they could send someone out to verify, and they said they would add it to the inspection schedule. That bought me a week. Brenda did not wait. She sent an email to the entire neighborhood with the subject line "compliance alert" and a photo of my half-finished fence, claiming I was ignoring HOA rules and creating a safety hazard. The email included my address and a line that said, "Residents are encouraged to report any further violations to the Architectural Committee immediately." My phone started buzzing within an hour. Neighbors I had never spoken to were texting me screenshots, some supportive, most just confused. One guy asked if I was getting evicted. Another said Brenda had done the same thing to him over a mailbox and that I should lawyer up before it got worse. I did not have money for a lawyer, but I did have a plan. I started documenting everything, every email, every photo, every conversation. I added tabs to my binder for timeline, evidence, and witnesses. I printed copies of the survey, the city permit, and the original HOA approval. I took photos of every other fence in the neighborhood that was taller, closer to the property line, or a completely different style than the rules allowed. I found 9. I also reached out to a guy named Colin who used to work for the management company before he quit. I had delivered mail to his house for a year, and he always seemed reasonable. I texted him, asked if he remembered Brenda, and he replied within 5 minutes. He said, "She is a nightmare. She ran off 2 managers before I left. If you need help, I have got emails." We met at a coffee shop that Wednesday. He brought a thumb drive with old correspondence between Brenda and the management company, including a thread where she pushed to fast-track violation notices without site visits, and another where she argued that surveys should not override committee discretion. He also had a list of homeowners she had targeted, and my name was not the first. Colin said, "She does this to people she thinks will not fight back. If you have proof, take it to the board. If the board does not listen, take it to the state. HOAs hate state complaints because it triggers audits." I thanked him, bought him a coffee, and added everything to my binder. 2 days later, I got a notice in the mail. It was on HOA letterhead, hand-delivered, and it said I was being fined $600 for continued non-compliance and that a lien would be filed if I did not pay within 10 days. The notice was dated the day after I had stopped work. I checked my doorbell camera footage. Brenda had delivered it herself at 11 at night, walking up to my door with a flashlight, posting the notice, and walking away. The timestamp was clear. That was when I knew I was not dealing with someone who cared about rules. I was dealing with someone who wanted me gone. If you are enjoying this story and want to see how this nightmare ends, hit that like button and subscribe for more real HOA drama. My fence materials were scheduled to arrive on Friday, and I knew Brenda was going to call it dumping the second the truck showed up. I called the delivery company and asked them to document everything, take photos, get a signature, and make sure the driver noted the time and condition. They said they would. The truck arrived at 9 in the morning. I was waiting in the driveway with my binder when Brenda walked up from across the street, label maker in hand, and said, "You cannot store construction materials on common property." I said, "This is my driveway." She said, "The HOA considers the first 6 feet of every driveway to be part of the access easement. I am tagging this as a violation right now." The delivery driver got out of the truck, looked at both of us and said, "I am just here to drop off materials. Do you want them or not?" I said yes. Brenda said, "If you unload this, I am calling code enforcement." The driver unloaded everything anyway. Brenda took photos, stuck a little label on one of the fence panels with her label maker, and walked off without another word. I checked the label later. It said violation in tiny letters. I got another email that afternoon. This one said I was being summoned to a compliance hearing in 2 weeks and that failure to attend would result in automatic penalties. The email listed 8 separate violations, most of them invented, and included a demand that I pay all outstanding fines before the hearing or face a lien and legal action. I replied with a formal dispute, attached my survey, my permit, my photos of other non-compliant fences, and a request for the specific HOA rule section that allowed Brenda to issue stop work orders without board approval. I got an automated reply and nothing else. I waited for the right audience, because the reveal needed witnesses. Colin texted me the night before the hearing and said, "Bring everything. The board does not like Brenda, but they are scared of her. If you can prove she is lying, they will fold." The hearing was in the clubhouse at 6. I showed up at 5:45 with my binder, a printed timeline, and a folder full of side-by-side photos showing fences that violated the same rules Brenda claimed I broke. I also brought my phone with the doorbell footage queued up. The board was 3 people, a president, a treasurer, and a secretary. Brenda sat off to the side with her clipboard and her badge reel, calm and ready. There were about a dozen neighbors in the folding chairs, some I recognized from my route, and one I knew was the delivery driver who had been stuck at the curb during the tow standoff. He gave me a nod. The board president opened with, "We are here to review a complaint filed by the Architectural Committee regarding unapproved construction and non-compliance with setback and height restrictions. Brenda, do you want to present your case?" Brenda stood up, walked to the front, and laid out her version. She said I had ignored multiple warnings, refused to cooperate, and endangered the community by building a fence that violated the rules. She showed photos of my property, pointed at measurements she claimed were wrong, and said the survey I provided was not reliable because it contradicted the HOA plat map. She finished with, "I have all day, and so does my fine meter." The room went quiet. The board president looked uncomfortable. The treasurer shuffled papers. I stood up and said, "Can I respond?" I walked to the front, opened my binder, and slid a tab timeline to the board and the room at the same time. I said, "This is a record of every interaction I have had with Brenda Lee since March. It includes emails, photos, doorbell footage, and certified survey documents that prove my fence is fully compliant with city and county regulations." I pulled out the side-by-side photos and passed them around. I pointed at each one and said, "This fence is 3 inches taller than mine. This one is 4 inches over the setback line. This one is painted a color that is not on the approved list. None of these homeowners have been fined. None of them have been issued stop work orders. None of them have been threatened with liens." Brenda stood up and said, "Those properties were grandfathered in." I said, "My property was built in the same year as 2 of those." Brenda said that is not relevant. I said it is extremely relevant, and I can prove it. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the projector screen at the front of the room, and played the doorbell footage of Brenda delivering the lien notice at 11 at night. The timestamp was visible. The board president leaned forward. The treasurer frowned. The secretary took notes. I said, "This was delivered after I had already stopped work. The lien notice claims I continued construction in defiance of a stop work order, but the footage shows I had not done any work for 4 days. This is retaliation, not enforcement." Brenda stood up again and said, "Go ahead and call whoever you want. I have a committee for that." The delivery driver in the back of the room laughed. Someone else groaned. The board president said, "Brenda, sit down." I kept going. I pulled out the email thread Colin had given me and said, I also have correspondence from a former management company employee showing that Brenda Lee pushed for enforcement policies that bypass site verification and rely entirely on committee discretion. In at least 3 cases, she filed violations before conducting any inspection. The board president said, "Where did you get that?" I said, "From someone who quit because he could not work under those conditions." Brenda said, "That is hearsay." I said, "It is documented." And I have one more thing. I pulled out the final piece, a printed log showing repeated gate access failures tied to Brenda's admin account. Colin had included it on the thumb drive, and I had cross-referenced it with dates when my mail was delayed, my delivery truck was blocked, and vendors reported being turned away at the gate. Every single incident matched. I said, this shows a pattern of interference that goes beyond enforcement. It shows targeted harassment, designed to delay, intimidate, and financially harm me. And I am playing it on speaker outside the clubhouse so neighbors hear it in real time. I did not actually play it on speaker, but the threat was enough. The board president looked at Brenda and said, "Is this true?" Brenda did not answer. She grabbed her clipboard and walked out. The board went into a private session for 20 minutes. When they came back, the president said, "We are freezing all enforcement actions related to your property pending a full policy rewrite. The fines are being reversed, and the lien will not be filed. We are also opening an internal review of the architectural committee's procedures." 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the management company. Brenda Lee had been placed on a no-contact directive by management and was no longer allowed to conduct site inspections without board approval. A month after that, the HOA voted to remove her from the architectural committee entirely. But I did not stop there. I filed a complaint with the State Consumer Protection Office, citing harassment, improper enforcement, and financial harm. The state opened a case file. The HOA rushed to settle, agreeing to pay my legal fees, reverse all fines, and implement a formal appeals process for future violations. Brenda was forced to resign from every leadership role. I finished my fence in June. It is 6 feet tall, pressure-treated pine, and it sits exactly 16 inches inside my property line. Every measurement is perfect. Every post is plumb. Every panel is level. The funny part is that the tow vendor Brenda called that day wrote a letter to the board saying he would not work with the HOA again unless they provided proper authorization protocols. A tow vendor refusing to act without proper authorization ended up being the thing that made the board realize how far out of control Brenda had gotten. Colin stopped by last week with a 6-pack. We sat on my new deck and he said, "You know she tried to get me fired 3 times when I worked there." I said, "I believe it." He said, "I am glad you fought back." I am glad I did too. The neighborhood group chat is quieter now. Brenda does not post anymore. The compliance alert stopped. People still talk about the hearing, about the doorbell footage, about the moment she walked out. Someone called it the best HOA meeting in Stonegate history. I still deliver mail here. I still hear the gossip. But now when people see me, they ask how the fence is holding up, and they tell me their own HOA horror stories. Some of them ask for advice. I tell them the same thing Colin told me. Document everything. Know your rights, and do not let someone with a clipboard and a grudge ruin your life. My mom called last month and asked how things were going. I told her the fence was done and the HOA was leaving me alone. She said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. I told her I did not have a choice. She said, "You always have a choice, and you made the right one." I think about that a lot, about how easy it would have been to just pay the fines, tear down the fence, and move on. About how close I came to losing everything because one person decided I was an easy target. About how many other people Brenda did this to before someone finally had the proof and the patience to fight back. I still have the binder. I keep it on a shelf in my garage, right next to the survey packet and the city permit. I do not think I will ever need it again, but I like knowing it is there, just in case. The fence is still perfect. The posts have not shifted. The panels have not warped. Every time I walk out back, I see those orange survey stakes still in the ground, and I remember the day the surveyor pointed at the line and said, "Whoever told you it is over is either guessing or lying." Brenda was lying. She knew the fence was legal. She saw the survey months ago, before I even started. Colin found the email where she requested a copy from the county and never disclosed it. That was the twist that changed everything. She did not just ignore the rules. She weaponized them, knowing I was in the right the whole time. That is what made it so satisfying when the board finally saw through it. The final showdown happened 2 months after the hearing. I got a call from a detective with the county, asking me to come down to the station. He said Brenda had filed a harassment complaint against me, claiming I had threatened her and damaged her property. I brought my binder, my phone, and Colin as a witness. We sat on a police cruiser hood where the report gets written while Karen keeps talking. Brenda showed up with a folder full of printed emails, claiming I had sent her threatening messages. The detective asked to see them. Every single one was a reply to her violation notices, written in plain factual language. There was nothing threatening in any of them. The detective looked at her and said, "This is not harassment. This is someone defending their property rights." Brenda said, "He has been targeting me for months." The detective said, "Do you have proof?" She did not. The detective closed his notebook and said, "I am not filing this. If you file a false report again, you will be charged." Brenda left without another word. That was the last time I saw her. The HOA is different now. The new architectural committee chair is a retired contractor who actually reads the rules and answers emails. The board implemented a formal appeals process with a third-party mediator. The neighborhood group chat is used for yard sales and lost pets instead of public shaming. I still see Brenda sometimes, driving past my house or walking her dog on the far side of the neighborhood. She does not look at me. I do not look at her. It is over. But the fence is still there. Perfect. Legal. Mine. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.